Hi everyone, my name is Julie and I'm one of the directors at the Centauri Summer Arts Camp, the Arts Retreats, the International Tours and the Arts Academy, and I'm here to tell the second of 14 stories this evening. Why are we doing this? Well, because stories are something that link people together. It's a shared experience and I think we need shared experiences now more than ever before. Storytelling is a huge tradition that we have at Centauri. It's something that we do regularly. We have them as part of what we call our pajama rama nights, and all our campers gather together. They bring their pillows, they get their pajamas, they wear comfy clothes, they bring their soft toys, and all of us lie together in the theatre under soft, warm lights. We have soft music playing and we share a story together. Some of them just 30 minutes, some of them up to an hour. So I'm going to invite you to join us to do this tonight. Some of you I know are campers, and welcome back if you are. Some of you may be campers looking at joining us this summer for the first time. I know we also have parents, grandparents, friends of campers. So welcome to all of you. And what I'd like to suggest is get a comfy pillow, make yourself comfortable, get your favorite drink, your favorite soft toy, and find a space that you can be comfortable in. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and share this experience with all of us tonight. In the meantime, please remember that I'm telling a story. I'm not reading a story. This is all impromptu. It's all from my imagination, although the stories that I tell are always based on traditional myths. So you will hear stumbling, you will hear that human dimension of something that has not been cropped and edited. And I think that's part of the experience. So I think we're ready to begin. And I'd like to invite all of you to close your eyes. Close your eyes. Visualize yourself in a room filled with people, all of them just like you right now, finding a comfortable spot and also closing their eyes, getting ready to begin. And the story I'm going to tell you tonight is called The Chinese Tapestry. This is a story that's quite old. I think it's Chinese. And it begins a long, long time ago. It begins in an area of China that is completely devoid of color. Everything as far as the eye can see is grey. The fields are grey, the mountains grey, the sky's grey, the trees grey, and the rivers, the water in the river, that runs grey too. And in this grey and colourless landscape stands a single house, far, far from any other home. And in this house lives a mother and her 3 sons. And every morning they push back their grey blankets, they eat a handful of grey rice, and they head out into the fields to toil side by side all day long, working for a subsistence living and just making a meagre amount of food that they can bring home at night and eat. But if you thought their lives were completely colourless, you would be wrong. For these 3 boys and their mother share a wonderful, magical secret. The mother has a possession. She owns a beautiful embroidered tapestry. And this tapestry is something that she's been working on all of her life. And every time she has just a little bit of spare money, she sends away to the city for another colour. And she weaves this bright colour into the fabric of the tapestry until the tapestry is the one shining colourful thing in their lives. It has birds that are multicoloured, butterflies, rivers that run with colour, and the grasses and the trees and the leaves are every shade of green imaginable. And every night, when the old woman is not weaving her tapestry, she's using it to weave dreams for her sons. She tells stories, pointing to objects in the tapestry that ensure that when the three boys go to bed, their dreams are filled with every colour of the rainbow. They shine all night long. And so it is that they can find the energy to get up in the morning, to go out to the fields, and to toil all day long in the grey landscape. Because every night, when they come home, they know the mother will pull the tapestry down from the wall and weave from it every bit of magic they could possibly want. And this goes on, and it sustains them until one day, a giant wind blows down from the mountain, a wind sent by the gods to test them. And the wind blows heavily down the mountain. It blows in through the door of the cottage. It swirls around the cottage, and it picks up in its whirlwind everything it can find. It picks up the grey blankets, the rice jar. It picks up every object that they own. It picks up the multicoloured tapestry, and it weaves them all into a vortex faster and faster and faster, while the three boys and their mother look on shocked. And then suddenly the wind whips out the door, everything falls back in its place, and the wind is gone up the mountain, and everything is just as it was, with one exception. The magical tapestry is gone. The old woman looks at the space on the wall where the tapestry hung, and she says to her sons, "The gods have stolen from us the one thing that gave our life colour. This is a test. The gods wish to see how we will survive." And survival was difficult the next day. The boys dragged themselves out to the fields as usual. They sowed the fields all day long. They came home exhausted. And that night there was no tapestry, no multicoloured dreams. They took to their beds and stared at the grey ceiling all night. And when the morning came, the mother said to them, "This cannot go on, for without dreams, without a way to imagine, without beauty inside our minds and our souls, we will surely die." So she picked her eldest son, and she said to him, "You must go up the mountain. You must climb up the mountain, and you must challenge the gods to give us back our tapestry. You must order the gods to do this. And if they refuse, do whatever challenge they set you, so that we can get back our tapestry, and life may go on as it always has." Well, the oldest son felt proud to be chosen for this challenge, and he shouldered a sack, and he walked out of the door, and he waved goodbye to his mother and his brothers, and he said, "Don't fear, I will succeed in this task." And then he turned his back on them all, and he began to walk up the mountain. And all day long he walked up the steep, steep mountain, knowing that the gods were ahead of him and that they'd stolen the tapestry, and that at all costs he had to steal it back or gain it back somehow. And he walked all day long, and when it came to nightfall, he found himself on a plateau, a flat piece of rock jutting out from the mountainside. And he thought to himself, "I will rest on this plateau all night, and in the morning I'll continue to the top of the mountain." And he found, as if by magic, a rock on the plateau shaped like a pillow. And so he laid down and rested his head on the rock pillow and fell fast asleep. And that night the gods came to him in a dream. They stood before him on the plateau and they said, "You are undertaking a pointless, futile task. For if you get to the top of the mountain, we will test you in every which way, and you will be found unworthy. And even if you are not unworthy, we will never give you back the tapestry, and therefore you can make an alternate choice. All you have to do in the morning is reach your hand beneath this rock shaped like a pillow, and bring out from underneath it a small pouch that will be filled with gold coins. enough gold coins that you and your brothers and your mother may eat well for a whole month." The boy woke up. It was dawn. He looked around him, and then he reached underneath the rock shaped like a pillow. And sure enough, there, where his head had been landed, there was a pouch. And inside the pouch, more gold than this boy had seen in his whole life. Enough gold for them to eat like kings and queens for an entire month. And without thinking, he decided he had to abandon his quest, and that this was fabulous. What could be better than so much gold? And he turned around and ran down the mountain, shouting for his brothers, shouting for his mother, to tell them the good news, to tell them how much gold coins they had. And he ran all the way to the cottage, and the brothers watched him as he opened the pouch and poured the coins into their hands. And all three of them were aghast to see so much money. And they were so taken up by the money that none of them thought to look at their mother, who stood staring at her eldest son in disappointment. And sure enough, for the next 28 days, the family had everything they could desire. They bought food, they bought new clothes, they slept under warmer blankets. They had everything they wanted, really. And they were sort of happy, although the dreams never came back. But before long, the month was up. The gold coins were spent, the rice jar was empty, and the boys took to their beds again. And the mother watched her sons, and she realized that the will to live was draining out of them. And when morning came, she shook her second son, and she said, "You too must go up the mountain and challenge the gods, and you must succeed where your elder brother failed. For if you do not, we will have no dreams, no multicolored hopes for the future. You must bring back that tapestry, for when you do so, you bring our stories. You bring the connection we have with one another. Go, my son, and do not fail us in this." And the second son turned away from the cottage, and he walked his way proudly up the mountainside, quite astonished and happy to be given this task. And all day long he climbed up towards the gods in their seat in the clouds. All day long he climbed until nightfall, when he also reached the plateau with the rock shaped like a pillow. "Here I will rest through the night," he thought to himself, "and in the morning I will continue up to the peak." And so he laid his head down on the rock and fell fast asleep. And in his dreams, the gods appeared to him. And they said to him, "Stop in this foolish quest. Your tapestry belongs to us now, and regardless of how many tests we set you and how many of those you pass, we will never return it. So you can stop right now, end this futile task of yours, go back home, and take with you a wallet of gold, so heavy that both arms will be needed to carry it. And take this back down to your family, and that will be enough gold to last you a whole year." Well, the boy woke up, and it was dawn, and he reached under the pillow, and sure enough, he pulled out a small sack of gold, enough for both his arms to enfold, enough gold inside to last a whole year. Enough gold that it was actually difficult to run down the mountain. He would have to walk, he would have to drag it behind him. And when he saw this gold, he thought, "They can't possibly think that I've failed if I take this home. Why, this is enough coin to last us for the entire year. No one can be disappointed at that." And so he took the giant sack of gold in his arms and staggered down the mountain with it. And he went all the way home shouting for his brothers, shouting for his mother, "Come and see, come and see, come and see how much gold I have." And they ran out of the cottage, and his two brothers ran over to him, and they stood with running the gold coins through their fingers, pouring the gold over their heads, stamping their feet on it, throwing it in the air like rain. They'd never seen so much gold before. "We are almost as rich as kings and queens," they said to each other. "And now we'll have as much as we want to eat all year. We'll have all the clothes we want. We'll have all the possessions we want. We can do whatever we want for a whole year. We don't even have to work in the fields." And the three brothers were so busy congratulating themselves, they didn't see their mother standing behind them in the doorway, looking so disappointed in her second son. And the year went by, and sure enough, there was always plenty to eat. And sure enough, there were even more blankets to heap up on the beds, even more clothing for them to wear. In fact, they had everything they wanted. They didn't have dreams, or stories, or hope for the future, but temporarily they thought themselves pretty content because they'd never owned so much before. But a year goes by very quickly. Before long, it was up, and the rice jar once again stood empty on the table. And it was hard for the brothers to go to work in the fields. They'd lost the habit of working. It was hard for them to foresee anything they might gain from it in the future. So they took to their beds, and their mother looked at them as they slept, knowing that if she did not do something, if she could not find a way through this problem, they would all surely die. "I have but one son left," she thought to herself, "for I am not strong enough to climb the mountain." Her third son was the youngest of the three, the smallest, still a child, and she was loath to send him on what could be a dangerous task, but she realized there was no alternative, and when the morning came, she shook awake her third son and she said, "You must succeed where your elder brothers have failed. You must climb to the top of the mountains, and you must bring back the tapestry. For if you do not succeed in this task, if you do not force the gods to give back what they have stolen, we will all surely die." And the third son got a sack and threw it over his shoulder, and his mother put in it the last few grains of rice. And then she showed him the door. And the boy began to walk, feeling only humility as he looked behind and saw his mother and his two elder brothers, and realized that everything now rested on him, his shoulders. And he began to climb. All that day he climbed the mountain, wondering what it would be at the top. And at night he found a plateau halfway up, just as his brothers had. And in one corner of the plateau he saw a rock shaped like a pillow. "Here I will rest for the night," he told himself, "and in the morning I will continue to the top of the mountain." And he laid down with his head on the rock shaped like a pillow, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. That night, the gods came to the third son in a dream. They stood beside him, all around him in a semicircle, looking down on his sleeping form, and they each shouted a warning that if he should continue to the top of the mountain, nothing but certain death would await him, that they would give him every possible challenge, and they would ensure that he failed, because under no circumstances ever would they give back the tapestry. "Now there is an alternative," one of them said when their dire warnings were finished. "When you wake up in the morning, you will find beside your pillow a sack full of gold. So much gold you won't be able to drag it down the mountainside, and you'll have to call your brothers to help you. So much gold that you and your brothers and your mother will want for nothing for the rest of your days. So much gold you can buy anything your heart desires. All you have to do is accept that gold in place of the tapestry, and there you go. They're bound to think you've succeeded." The brother woke up. It was dawn, cold and shivery. The gods were gone, and at first he thought there was nothing but him on the plateau. But then he turned around, and he saw beside him, beside the rock pillow, a sack full of gold coins. more gold than he suspected anyone he'd ever met had ever seen before in his life. He thought there was probably more gold in this sack than the bank held. He looked at the gold, and then he looked around him, the bleak, bleak mountainside, and he looked up at the clouds. He thought what would happen if his family had so much gold, that they would never be hungry again, they would never need to work again, that their lives would just be so easy. And then he thought of what it had been like to dream, to see those multicolored fabrics woven into the tapestry. He recalled a childhood filled with stories by the fireside. He recalled how he'd seen the future differently when his mother told him those stories. And he recalled what it was like to hope, to feel inspired, to feel filled with a magical sense that anything was possible. And in that instant, when he recalled those things, he knew exactly what he had to do. He stepped forward to the edge of the plateau. He looked up into the clouds where the gods sat unseen, and he yelled in his loudest voice, "Give me back our tapestry. I don't want your money. Give me the tapestry. That's what we want. I want it back right now." And when he'd stopped yelling, he felt for an instant very foolish, and he stood there waiting to see what would happen. And he waited, and for a while, nothing happened at all. And then he heard the beating of wings. He was a little scared, and he saw, coming down from the heavens, coming down from the clouds, something that appeared to be a bird, a huge bird filled with colour. And the flapping grew louder, and the bird grew closer, until the third son realized that this was not a bird at all. The flapping he was hearing was the flapping of cloth, not wings, and what was coming down to him from the top of the mountainside, what was coming down to him now, was the tapestry. As multicoloured as he remembered it, as beautiful as he recalled it in his memories. And the tapestry grew closer and closer, and the third son realized with delight he had passed the gods' tests right there on the plateau, without even climbing up to the top. And he whooped with joy. And the tapestry grew closer and closer, and he reached out his hands to grab it, but it didn't stop there. It flapped its multicolored fabric sides, and off it went down the mountain, flap, 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 down into the valley. And the third son, just as the sack of gold melted behind him, ran down the mountainside behind the tapestry. And he ran, calling to his two brothers, calling to his mother, listening to the flapping of the multicolored tapestry ahead of him. And he reached the cottage, and they all held on to each other. The three sons and the mother held on to each other, laughing with joy, as the tapestry did an honour lap around the cottage. And they all laughed, laughed, laughed as they saw it come from behind the cottage, its multicolours flashing in the daylight. And then the strangest thing started to happen. Just as they expected the tapestry to flap its way into the cottage and hang itself back on the wall where it belonged, it hovered there in midair in front of them. And then, as if four invisible arms were pulling, one from each corner, it began to stretch. "No!" screamed the mum. "No!" screamed the three boys. The tapestry stretched tighter and tighter until the most horrific sound they had ever heard in their lives before, the sound of tearing. And the tapestry began to rip, firstly into 2 pieces, then into 4, then into 8, 16, 32, 64 pieces, ripping into smaller and smaller pieces, as if being torn at by invisible hands. The tapestry being clawed into smaller and smaller pieces, while the 3 sons and their mother stood in front of the cottage and sobbed. The very thing they longed for most was being destroyed before their very eyes. And a wind came down from the mountain, and when the tapestry had been ripped into 1,000,000 tiny pieces, the wind began to blow. And while the sons and the old woman began to cry again, fearing that they were seeing the last of their treasured possession, the tiny pieces of the tapestry floated up into the sky, and as if an invisible mouth was blowing, they scattered all over, and they fell upon the world like rain. Little tiny fragments of turquoise and gold and orange, vermilion hues, golden sunlight colours, light blue, dark blue, the colours of the sea, of the leaves, of the butterflies, all of them raining down on the world to paint it. And the tears turned to laughter as the family realised what it was the gods were doing, that the gods were turning their tapestry with its multicolours into the world they lived in. And now the river that had ran grey ran with every blue you can imagine, and butterflies multicoloured and golden flitted through the sky, and every kind of bird floated through the air, and the sky was every colour of blue, and the forests glittered with every shade of green. And now the fields were sowed with golden corn, and the boys laughed and the mother laughed to see their world transformed, no longer grey and colourless, but filled with the dreams that they had believed in so much. And they went back into the cottage and they told their stories, with the windows open to a multicoloured world. And as time went on, the cottage became filled with children. And in time, the mother, who was now a very old woman, would sit down by the fireplace in the cool winter evenings with her sons and her grandsons, her daughters and her granddaughters, all of them together holding hands. And she would say, "I've always told stories, and here is one to begin with tonight. Once upon a time, this entire world was grey," and her story would continue from there. And that is the story of the Chinese tapestry. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night. Be kind to one another, and more tomorrow night.